Welcome to Category Visionaries, the show dedicated to exploring exciting visions for the future from the founders who are on the front lines building it. In each episode, we'll speak with a visionary founder who's building a new category or reimagining an existing one. We'll learn about the problem they solve, how their technology works, and unpack their vision for the future. I'm your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines Media. Now let's dive right into today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Category Visionaries. Today we're speaking with Avi Singer, CEO and founder of ShowedMe, a compliance training platform that's raised $4.5 million in funding. Avi, how are you?
I'm doing great, Brett. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Super excited. Let's go ahead and jump right in. What does ShowedMe do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I always like to preface it by saying it's somewhat not so sexy when it comes to technology. We do online compliance training for post-acute and behavioral health organizations. Essentially what that means is people who work in a nursing home, a home care agency, some kind of mental health organization, have to take annual training, OSHA, HIPAA, anti-harassment, things like that. And we make it easy for those organizations to provide that training for their employees. But I love it. I mean, again, it sounds boring, but I really enjoy doing it.
I mean, it sounds important. It sounds like that's work that needs to happen there.
I think it wasn't important. Yeah, no, it's important. Sometimes people are doing like use AI now, or they're doing, a couple years of machine learning. We just make sure people take their HIPAA training.
Yeah, my next person I'm interviewing, they're building missiles.
I'm not building missiles.
World.
That's great.
But obviously, you must have a background, right? Like this doesn't sound like one of those problems that you just you have the idea, you see it out in the real world and you say, oh, I must solve this. It sounds like you must have some deep domain expertise in some parts of this world. So take us back to kind of your backstory, what you were doing before founding the company, and then what led you to say, yep, this somewhat boring idea or problem is where I want to go and spend the next 11 years of my life, or however many years you're going to continue to spend on this.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I hope I don't bore anybody with this, but I started out in HR, just love working with people. So I started out my career in HR, was very fortunate to start out in the tech space in New York, which was a really hot space to be in 2005, 2006, when I started working in HR. I worked for a great company called DoubleClick. We learned a ton over there about growing businesses from A to B to C and hopefully Z. We were acquired by Google after a period of time. So that was a good validation of the work we had put in terms of growing the business and growing a really great company. I stayed on at Google for a little bit and then moved on to a couple other companies, then quite some time at another company called Undertone. And as part of what I was focused on within training, within HR, I should say, was training employees. Like, how do you take employees who are going to school for, maybe they're going for software engineering, maybe they're going for things within online advertising, but they're not really learning the industry the way we need to learn the industry. And I started thinking about the concepts of knowledge management and sort of social learning within organizations. And I remember early on reaching out to companies like Facebook and LinkedIn and saying, hey, you've got a great product, you've got a great platform. Yeah, I think your kids are going places, but have you ever thought about using this in an enterprise setting? Like, could we use LinkedIn in our organization for knowledge sharing? Could you use Facebook in our organization? And the answer was no. So after a few years of doing this at various organizations, I started my own company called ShowedMe, which initially was a peer-to-peer learning platform designed for knowledge management within organizations. And the term ShowedMe actually came from this idea of you would ask somebody, how did you learn how to do the tables in Excel? Or how did you learn about the market in France or something like that? And people would say, well, somebody showed me, that guy showed me. And this idea, let's capture that. Let's capture all these peer-to-peer sort of ShowedMe experiences that are happening and make them available for the organization. And that was a good business. We started it. We had some traction early on. The challenge with that business when you're in SaaS is it was very much a nice to have business, right? So you think about social learning, knowledge management, peer-to-peer learning. It's nice, right? But it's not really the need to have. And when you're trying to start a company and grow a B2B SaaS business, you want to be in the need to have space. So around that time, we were trying to figure out, how do we create stickiness for our company? How do we move from nice to need? I came across a few colleagues of mine, some friends of mine actually, who were in the home care space, running home care agencies, which again, completely different world than working in tech, but they had a unique challenge. And that was they were trying to move their employees from classroom-based training to online training. They had these annual compliance requirements that were incredibly strict. They needed to cover a certain number of hours and topics on an annual basis. And they were saying, hey, can you help us? We've got 1,000 employees and we're running through a classroom on an annual basis. Like, we've got to figure out how to put this online. And as an entrepreneur, I looked at that sort of problem and I said, is this something I would want to tackle? And I looked at a couple of things. Number one, you think about like elder care, so the whole post-acute market. It grows organically 10, 15% every year. So again, thinking as an entrepreneur, wow, a market that grows 10, 15%, that's something I want to do. Second, it's compliance. So it's not nice to have, it's need to have. They actually do this training every single year. And then third was annual recurring revenue. They need to do this training every single year. So after kind of spending some time thinking about it, I was like, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. I want to be in an industry that needs me. I want to be in an industry where, we're going to be able to see some success. And we pivoted in 2016, 2017 into online compliance training. And that's what we've been doing since. We love it. We've grown into, I think we're now in over 25 states, working with nursing homes and home care agencies and behavioral health organizations and providing their annual training. And what's exciting for me is not so much that it's like cool and we talk about that this like cool, sexy business. But what I do love about it is one, it's helping our clients be successful. This is an important thing for them. They have to be compliant every single year to meet state and federal standards. And also we're able to do it well. And I love that. I love being part of an organization where we've got a great company, we've got a great product, and we're doing something that's not only helpful, but we're doing it at a really high level. And again, we may not be the sexiest industry and field, but we're loving and enjoying it.
Yeah, I generally view like quote unquote like boring businesses are like the best businesses. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, the missile guy I'm talking to next, like that's cool. And like maybe a VR guy next. But a lot of times businesses don't make any money for a very long time. But the boring businesses there, they make a lot of money. And what I've found is I'm sure you've experienced like every business is fun if you just love business. Like once you dig into it, it gets fun and there's exciting and fun, interesting things to learn about every business, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and I will tell you, there's absolutely something great about not having to create demand, right? So it's not like I have to go over like, yeah, I mean, come on, who wants to buy a missile, right? Or who can figure out what to do with VR, right? Those are challenges. I'm sure you'll have great conversations with those people. I'll definitely listen to it. But that's the sort of demand you have to create. And what's nice about our business, like you said, is those old boring businesses, you don't have to create that demand. The demand is there. It's just convincing your prospects and customers, hey, we're the best ones to help you achieve what you need to achieve. So I agree with you 100%. Like you said, some of those boring businesses, I don't know, you could sell doorknobs, right? Everyone needs a doorknob, right? But that's who you want to be. And I completely agree with that.
How do you go about capturing demand? 'Cause I think that is the other side of that, right? It's nice that you don't have to create the demand, but on the other hand, there's more people battling for the demand that's already there. What do you do to capture that existing demand?
Yeah, that's a really great question that we get. And again, I'm happy to answer because I have to answer that multiple times a day, right? I will call on prospect and potential customers and they'll ask me that question, right? What are you going to do that's different than what we're doing today? And I think what we're fortunate to be able to do is approach a very old school problem, right? Train people. Right? That's not something new. But what we really did was kind of looked at the market that we're going into and why has this not worked before, right? We're not the first people doing it. We're not the first people to provide online training or things like that. But we really looked at what does that market look like? What's different about it? And make sure that we're not just coming in and saying, hey, we sell online compliance training, but really come in and say, we understand why this has not worked for you before. Or we understand why you're hesitant to move from classroom to online. And we understand the market. We understand the users. We understand what you're trying to do. We understand your business. And then we want to partner with you. And I think when that comes across as authentic, again, I don't know that you can necessarily create more demand. The demand is there. Everyone has to do it, which is nice. But you can certainly create interest when people realize, hey, this isn't somebody just trying to sell me a product. This is somebody who's taken the time to understand what our business challenges are, what's holding us up, what's preventing us from growing, what's preventing us from being successful, and seems like it'd be a good partner of ours. And I think whenever you introduce yourself and get that as the initial conversation, you're going to be able to have some really good conversations with people. And then the next challenge is, okay, how do we move from being good friends into actually selling you a product that you'll pay for? But that's really the kind of way that we approach it.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode. How long did it take from when you made that pivot in 2016, 2017 until you started to have sales conversations and you'd walk away just feeling good? Like, yes, that resonated. Like there's demand. They want it. They like how we're positioning it. How long did that process take?
Oh, I haven't even thought about that one. I will say that when we pivoted with a couple of customers already in place. So, we had agreements already. Hey, if I'm going to shift my company and pivot into online, like you've got to be on board with this. So we have a couple of customers that were clients of ours from day one. We're still clients of ours today. And I'm very appreciative of that they were willing to sort of go on this journey with us. And it wasn't easy. And we made a lot of mistakes along the way. I would say probably year two. So year one was kind of like, okay, we knew we were going to work with these companies. We knew they were sort of sold on it and bought in, and they were going to give us feedback and advice. But I think probably somewhere in year two, where we start to really have those independent, cold outreach conversations with people and just reaching out to someone saying, hey, have you thought about doing online training? Or are you happy with the way your training is going? We have a conversation and getting some of those contracts signed. That was really exciting. So I would say probably 18 months, probably say until we felt like, okay, we sold a real cold prospect who had never heard of us before, who doesn't know who I am, this software, we implemented it. I think that's probably pretty good about where we're going with this.
If we look at the evolutions of the marketing strategy, how do we kind of break that out? What have been those big evolutions?
I don't know that we figured it out yet. I don't know that we figured out the evolution of it, but I think one thing that's nice about the kinds of things that we do, and I was mentioning before, sort of this, they need to do it, is I think we're fortunate to be in an industry where people do look at sort of, I wouldn't even call it a competition, but there's a lot of competition and frenemies. And I think we benefit from the fact that we're in an industry where people are looking out and saying, how are these people handling this challenge or this headache? Or how are other organizations doing it? And I would say that a lot of our success has actually come from client referrals, inbound opportunities. I don't know that we've figured out the sort of outbound machine yet. And I don't know that would necessarily be the design of how we end up, going to market in the long term. I think we kind of like this thing where we have existing customer base that is great and really likes working with us and is willing to be referral sources and do case studies and help us out on the marketing side and all those things. And I almost like that better than anything else. Again, that certainly could change down the road where we're like, okay, enough of that. Now we just got to go hardcore and run really hard at lots of companies at the same time. But I like the kind of way that we go to market right now. And like I said, that could change over time. But I would say that's probably been the way that we've been from day one. I would say we're very much product led in a lot of ways. When you think about our sales and marketing strategy, it's very much about taking pride in the product that we have, taking pride in the team that we have, taking pride in the existing customer relationships that we have, and trying to just build on top of that.
What about milestones? So, what would you say is the biggest milestone that you've reached so far that you're able to talk about? And then take us back. How did you achieve that milestone? Like, what do you think you got right that led to achieving that milestone?
Yeah, I would say I'm very fortunate that I started the company with somewhat of a silent partner and had a little bit of a different journey than most tech founders, and that I didn't really spend a lot of time early on going out and raising money. I had a financial partner who was just like, I want this to be a bootstrap business. I'll help you out when you need to, but don't go down the venture capital route. And I have nothing against a venture capital. Some of my closest friends are in the venture capital industry, but it's a different world. If you get into that sort of VC world, you're spending a lot of time raising money, right? You got your seed round and then A and then B and C. You kind of always have this pressure of having to raise money in order to move your business along. And I was very fortunate I didn't have to. I got the opportunity to run a bootstrap business, which isn't easy. You've got to make sales and collect money in order to make payroll, but it keeps you nimble, it keeps you aggressive. And I kind of like that. And spent quite some time. I mean, many years of not having to go out and fundraise and raise money outside. And I think what changed was people started learning about our business, right? So, venture capital, growth equity, private equity, started learning about this business. Like, wait, we like this business, recurring revenue, elder care market, organic growth, compliance. They also like these businesses. As much as they like the AI, AR, VR kind of world, they also like the boring businesses. And I think that was the biggest, I would say as a milestone when we started getting significant interest. And I would say that's probably 2022, 2023, we started getting some significant interest from lots of really cool companies, the big names out there in the private equity, VC, and growth equity world who were reaching out. And for me, that was already a validation. We ended up doing a transaction last summer, but whether we had done a transaction or not, for me was you've hit this milestone of people like your business, people are interested in your business, and they potentially want to invest in your business. And that's, for me, that's enough.
See, I feel like you're just ahead of the curve here on at least two fronts. We've talked about the boring business side, but also this idea of, I think, bootstrapping, but not necessarily like you have to bootstrap forever. A lot of the founders that I'm talking to, they are trying to follow a very similar journey that you're on, where you bootstrap until it's a viable business and you bring on investors at a later date, but not starting with investment from day one. And there's no product. You just have money sitting there trying to find why you exist in the world. So I feel like you're ahead of the curve.
I appreciate that. I certainly take that as a compliment. And again, it's not every business, right? There are certain businesses that in order to get off the ground, you're going to need investment up front. There's areas of research that just cost a lot of money to go from point A to even where you can start to make money. So I wouldn't say I give this advice to everybody, but I certainly give this advice to a lot of SaaS companies, which is see if you can do this as a bootstrap business. Go as far as you can as a bootstrap business. Because again, I think it makes you hungry, it makes you aggressive, it makes you nimble. But also, I think the other part of it is I enjoy doing what I do. I enjoy being out there and talking to customers, spend the entire day yesterday actually at a conference and I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoy working with the employees at our organization and being part of the work that they're doing. And I think one of the challenges you have in sort of the model where if you design your business where you're making payroll based on money that you've raised is you can get stuck in that. And I've seen a lot of colleagues of mine and other people in, venture-backed businesses who spend a lot of time fundraising, spend a lot of time fundraising and, it's not necessarily what you want to be doing. And again, I'm not trying to make, blanket statements here, but, you just got to be careful about that. And I think there's many, many reasons to be bootstrapped. Again, as I mentioned before, not for everybody, but if you can, I definitely highly recommend it. And I would say I give a lot of guidance on my basis to various entrepreneurs, and people reach out to me. And usually the conversation starts like, hey, we're looking to raise money. I'm like, but are you really? Maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't. And sometimes I try to convince them to maybe go a different route.
Yeah, I think it's healthy that the conversation is even happening now. I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, it was like, if you're not raising a big venture-backed company or, doing a big venture-backed company, then like, what are you really doing with your life? Now, more and more, the founders I'm talking to, especially those who raised a lot of money in 2021, are desperately ready to get out of this game and go the bootstrap route and not having a board and investors and the pressure. Like, they just want to build good, healthy businesses. So, like you said, it's not like binary where it's like everything is only about doing bootstrap, but it's good that they're at least having that conversation now and people are evaluating which path makes the most sense for them in their business.
Definitely. And I agree with you. I think, look, it boggles my mind just how many funds are out there, right? And kudos to all those people who have raised VC funds and PE funds and all different types of funds. But that's sort of, again, they have the same pressure. They've got to deploy that capital, right? And I think there's that sort of back and forth that happens there. And like you were saying, in 2021, there was just so much white powder out there. And it was just like, okay, we got to deploy this. And sort of like convincing people like, oh, you need to go down this route and raise money and all that. And then, like you said, people realizing now in hindsight, like maybe not, maybe I didn't have to, or maybe I shouldn't have, and I was just fortunate. I had partners and mentors and things like that early on who were just said like, trust us on this. You're better off not, but it's not a blanket rule, but I agree with you. I see a lot more people are interested. And also, the other thing that I'm seeing a lot of is people really sort of better understanding equity, right? What does it mean to own the equity in your business? What does it mean to be able to make decisions without a board making decisions for you and things like that? And I think people are starting to understand like there's more than just capital. Capital is just one piece of the puzzle, but there are other things also. And you don't necessarily have to partner with a venture capital firm or P firm too early on in order to get access to the other things like the guidance and the other things that they bring to the table. And maybe you can wait a little bit longer.
Yep, 100% agree.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their US and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
As you reflect on the journey, just in terms of go-to-market decisions, what would you say has been the most impactful or one of the most impactful go-to-market decisions that you've made to date?
Yeah. As I mentioned before, I think we look at ourselves as a company that our go-to-market strategies is building off of our success. And I think the decision that we made to grow slowly, and this goes back to what we're talking about in terms of, not having outside capital who are looking for fast growth, a quick return on things like that. It gives you the opportunity to really, really hone your product. And I think if you have that luxury of time to really build out the early customer who turns into that, super fan early on, that's going to take you forever, right? So if you have that period of time to really build into like just a great product that people like, people talk about, people look at, whenever you try to enter that new vertical or that new market, it's just going to be that much easier. And I think sometimes people are like, no, the measure of success, as much as we were talking about for measure of success being how much money have I raised or how many rounds have I done. Sometimes the measure of success is how many verticals am I in? What's my TAM? How many states am I in? And I don't know if that should be the metric early on. I think the metric early on should be things that, what does my logo retention rate look like? What does my customer satisfaction rate look like? What does my net retention rate look like? Things like that, I think that are much more fundamental to the long-term success of your business are things you should be looking at early on. And that probably was the best decision that we made was, well, let's make sure we're building a great product, a great service, a great company. And then even if we make mistakes down the road, and we've made plenty, none I'm going to say here on this podcast. No, but when you do make those mistakes, it doesn't kill you. It doesn't crush you because you're just like, okay, that wasn't the right decision. That wasn't the right vertical. That wasn't the right state. That wasn't the right, and easier to focus on or decisions to make. But we still have our fundamental business there. And we still have a business that's great, that's working well. We still have a great company. Let's figure out the mistake we made. Let's figure out how it came about that we made that decision. And let's do something different moving forward.
Final question for you now before we wrap. Let's zoom out 3 to 5 years into the future. What's the big picture vision look like here?
I get that question a lot. I'm very fortunate. And again, I don't know that this answer translates to everyone. I'm very, very fortunate that I get to run a great product. And again, I say that sort of objectively, there's certain objective metrics that we put up on our website and things like that just show that this is actually a really sound and great product that people like. I mentioned I was at a conference yesterday and many of our customers were there, and I had an actually new sales guy there yesterday. He was like, people really like us. I'm like, yeah, they really do, right? We just have customers coming over and go, hey, we love you guys. You guys are great, And I'm not even afraid to sometimes go to conferences where we have a lot of existing customers who might come over and like complain and be like, hey, what's going on? This isn't working, or that's not working. We don't have that. So number one, I'm fortunate that we've got a great product. And, I mentioned a few times on this podcast, I really believe in it. We've built a really great company. I really get to work with great people every single day. So, I don't have in my mind, there's not something I don't think exit strategy, what's the number that's going to get me to sell this company or sell this business or anything like that. For me, we've got a lot we can still do and I'm enjoying it. And I want to do this for as long as those two things I mentioned before are still in place, that we've got a great product, a great service, and we've got a great company. I'll continue to do it. Yeah, sure. We may reach a tipping point, where it's what else can we do? Where else can we go? But that's a long, long way off. So if you tell me only 2-3 years from now, I would assume I'm doing the same thing, but hopefully doing it at a much broader scale. But the fundamentals will still be there for as long as I can. And when it's not there for any reason, whether it's, maybe somebody comes and does a better job than we do, or for whatever reason, we don't feel like we're the best company doing what we're doing, and we don't feel like we're the best company in terms of people, at that point, it probably won't be as exciting for me. But, I've been doing it now for 10 years and every day has not been an easy day. There've been many, many hard days and many difficult days and, many days where things have not been going right. But I can say certainly over the last few years, those are very, very few and far between. And as long as that continues, I think I'll be excited to continue to do this.
Amazing. I love it. All right, we're going to have to wrap here. Before we do, if there's any founders that are listening in and say, yeah, that guy with the boring business, the bootstrap business, I want to follow along with him, where should we send them?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. That's an easy place to find me. Probably the easiest place to find me, probably LinkedIn. Generally pretty active on there. I enjoy the community there, and I think that's a good place to find me. So if anyone has any questions, wants to reach out, Avi Singer at Showed Me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'll respond pretty quickly.
Amazing. Avi, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Brett. Really appreciate it as well.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.